Hi guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Storm here with me today. We're going to show you something very gnarly, how to escape one of the worst positions in Jiu-Jitsu, especially with someone heavier than you, the Scarfhold. We have two videos on the channel on the Scarfhold submission system. I'm going to refer to those a few times. Check those out, but today we're going to learn the defense, the escapes, the reversals. Let's get to it. Lewis. Okay, so we're going to work in a position called Scarfhold. Now the thing with Scarfhold is, you might know this as Kesagatami. We call it Scarfhold, and Kesagatami would be when he has an underhook. Please show that. Yeah. So the underhook would be better for him. Most people in Jiu-Jitsu learn to use the underhook, but there are positions when you end up with the Scarfhold nonetheless, or if you have a Judo background or anytime, if you play a good Scarfhold. Now, in our Scarfhold submission video, I'll put a link up here, you can see how we use this position, how Storm prevents me from going to his back, even though I have this underhook, because he keeps a hold of his own thigh, keeps it underneath my shoulder, and controls my arm. So I'm stuck here. Yeah, it now sucks to be in this position, especially if Storm puts some weight in. This is going to be I hope we don't do the video like this. This is going to be very hard. Guys, before we get started on how to escape here, I just want you to understand the framework. So first off, I'm stuck in a position. Now, one of the first things you learn in Jiu-Jitsu in a gnarly position like back mount, full mount, etc., is to relax. Now, that sounds pretty hard, especially when a tough guy is on top of you. He should be up on points. He might have passed your guard or took you down or swept you. Or not. But the first thing you want to do is relax there and don't start spazzing around with your arms because you will get submitted. Now let's slowly look at the risks here. First off, my legs are kind of safe, so I don't have to worry about those too much. Storm stepping over to full mount and scoring more points or going to knee on belly is pretty hard because he has to turn his hips all the way to go back to full mount or knee on belly. So getting more points for Storm, also a bit out of the question. This arm is kind of safe. If I start framing here or using this arm, he could go for wrist locks or for an Americana, but because he doesn't have an underhook, if he wants to get the Americana grip, I'm already out with this arm. So this arm is also kind of safe. Now we get into the unsafe part. Storm might go and choke me. Watch out for the mic, please. But that gives me this arm. We're going to see how we can escape later. But the worst thing, guys, is this arm. What people tend to do, they want to use this arm to frame, like they're doing AB escape. And as soon as they start bringing it to the hip, Storm puts the arm down, traps in Americanas or arm bars with the leg or goes into crucifix. This is the risky part. If he gets in the front of my face, he can go to arm triangle, etc. So first thing I want you guys to do is to don't spaz and use this arm. We're going to look at a few escapes. Yeah. Anytime Storm abandons my arm to go for my wrist or submissions and it's free, one of my best things to do is go towards his back. Now, I'm not going to do that by bridging into him because he's strong and massive here. I'm not going to get his back. What I want to do is I want to get my arm to his hip. So this is the hardest escape with a lot of risk. We're just going to cover it, yeah? And the main thing I want to be aware of is that I don't want to get my wrist in this area. This is dangerous. So if I want to get my arm towards me like so, like in side control, I will get trapped and submitted. So what I want to do is I want to pull my shoulder and my arm will like slide around his waist and get my elbow to his close side hip. Now that looks way easier than it is, especially if he keeps his weight on. We're just going to cover this one because later on we will create space to get to this one. Okay, so bear with me. Now if my elbow is on his hip and he starts pushing my wrist in for like Americanas and stuff, here I'm safe, as long as my elbow is in his hip. Now I'm going to show you a few ways to go to the back from here. So my main goal is to get this elbow here with sliding my arm across his waist. So I'm not going to go out, in, I'm going to drag my shoulder on the mat and keep pressure with my elbow here. Now, if I want to go to his back, look at my legs and my hip, I'm kind of stuck. So what I want to do is he will keep this headlock that he has, and I will switch my legs and invert under my position instead of going through Storm with all my weight. I try to get my forehead on the mat, get on my knees, okay? Now from here, I base on my forehead, start working backwards, cauliflower ear, and get to his back. Now, if Storm holds on to my head, yeah, the more I go behind him, the less strong, the weaker he is with his arm. So let's go a bit back, please, so you can see a bit more the framework. Yeah, this side. So in this case, do mind the mic a little bit. If I'm in front of him, Storm is pretty strong. The more I walk backwards, the weaker he gets. Like a little bit of a kimura on his arm. I can frame on his elbow. Now on the knees, if you get to switch your position, so just watch this for a second. I'm going to be in this line. I'm not going to go through Storm. I get my elbow, my shoulder drags to the mat, my elbow's on his hip. I start switching my legs, invert, get onto my forehead, and get to two knees. Now it's important that my knees are sideways from Storm. Because what happens if Storm feels me getting up and this knee is behind me, he will push to the right and I will collapse again. My knees are going to be on the side. If he pushes back to the right, I have a lot of pressure. I can push on his elbow or just start walking backwards and getting back control. Once again, it looks easier than it is, yeah? This is going to be very hard, but you have to mix it up with other stuff. But we have to start somewhere. Second thing, if I get my elbow here, and I do not get to go to my knees, so he's fighting my arm, or he's trying to choke me or whatever, and I drag my elbow to his hip. Another thing I can do, especially if people are forgetting their legs, I can use my far side leg to trap his leg. Close a grip or control him and start wedging my hip underneath and flipping him over. Now, instead of getting my second hook in, because I'm sideways, I prefer to just throw him over and get to the truck here. Yeah? We have a different video on that. Or from there, go to the back. But this arm is still keeping me from getting good back control. So, we have two options. We can come to our knees, start working to the back, or we can work the leg in. But if he walks a bit higher, it's very hard to get. Another thing we can do, turn a little bit back please, is to use this elbow wedge to create space, AB out, so AB my hips out, and get my knee in between. And now I just start ABing away, getting my head out. It's gonna be a hard fight, but I'm getting out of the position slowly, yeah? So these are the best ways to go to his back, which would always be my goal, because getting his back is obviously better than reversing the position, yeah? But that's not always happening. Now we're gonna look at some other ways of escaping this position. So, Storm has me in Scarfhold. I do not want to get submitted, and I do not want to take the risk to get my arm in, or even worse, he keeps control of my elbow, and I'm never getting this arm out. Trust me. Try this with a decent partner, especially if he's heavy. Yeah, getting the elbow to his close side hip is hard. But once again, relax, because as long as he keeps control of the elbow, he's not submitting me, nor is he getting more points in a better position. Yeah? So if I start using my hand here and trying to escape, I get submitted. So keep control, stay calm. Okay? Now we're going to use this hand. Now I usually only go for this. Later on we're going to mix it with different escapes. If he sits up a little bit proud and tries to put a lot of pressure on my chest like so, I'm going to frame his head away, AB out, and throw my leg over his head and curl it down to the mat as I sit back up. Now, in case you're thinking that you have to be flexible for this move, if my hip is aligned underneath Storm, I will never get my leg high up. Just stay in the same place, Storm. Now, if I AB my hip out, I will get my leg way higher. You see this? Okay. Now, if you want to be as strong as possible, you want to use your hamstring to curl and don't be sideways because of your knee. So I frame his face away. Now look, if I frame on Storm's neck, he will push his face down. You see this? So to push the face up and the neck, I'm not going to be at the neck, I'm going to be at the face. Push your neck down, Storm. And then I throw my leg over, curl. Yeah? That looks kind of easy. It's pretty hard. The hardest part is to get him to sit up straight. We're going to mix it with another one later on, and then everything should fall in place and make sense. So I keep this arm here. Now as soon as I let this go, 1 second. Storm, please submit my arm that's behind you. Go. I have some time here. If you feel like he's trapping the arm whilst you're doing this, you just go back. Yeah, so this is your safe space. You don't want to get this arm trapped here. But you can see I can hold on pretty long time, yeah, if I just keep it tight around his waist. I don't push the neck, I push the face. I don't lift my leg, I AB out, then curl my leg. Now to follow up, yeah, I will switch my legs and get into not the same position, but kesekatami, because I do have an underhook this time. So we're not in the same position. Another way I like to follow up is because my leg is across his face. I don't want to get tempted for the armbar here because the leg configuration is a bit hard, but as I go, I'll just sit up into north-south. Okay? My knees behind his face. I already controlled his underhook, so I can immediately get into kimuras. And we have a video, I think it was with Storm, with the north-south submissions. Once again, leg configuration, boom. He is sitting up proud. I don't push the neck, I push the face, I AB out, I go, my knee goes, I base, and my knees switch. Yeah, from there we work the north-south, or if you want, we can go back and start attacking the arm. So these are some of the basic escapes from the Scarfhold, but I always need my arm. So for the first one, I need to get my shoulder in. For the second one, I need my second hand. If you're wearing a gi, I could show you some cool reversals with the gi, but now let's go into the tightest one. So first off, Storm is making me uncomfortable in this position anytime, and it really sucks. So the least thing I want to do is make him suffer with me, okay? So in this time, I'm not gonna give up any of my arms, but I do wanna make him suffer with me. I will close my grip. I like to control either my wrist, depending on his chest size, or just the ball of my fist inside my hand and cup it like this. You can go S grip, gable grip, try something you like. I just like to put my wrist in, the sharp part of my wrist, and control my wrist or fist. Now if I squeeze on his ribs underneath his armpit, Storm is still pretty happy. So what I do, I go a bit lower, yeah, and I find the floating rib, I think it's called the lowest rib on his rib cage, and I squeeze. I don't squeeze my biceps in like I'm choking, but I bring my fist towards my own belly button. So here, yes, and that's hard. It does cost me a little bit of strength, but it's the least thing I can do to make him suffer. And I can hold this for a pretty long time, and Storm is not having a good time, I can tell you that, even though he's a bit stronger than I am. So from here on. Now I want to bridge. Now no one in the world will believe me, please work with me for a second, if I use upper body strength to throw Storm off. Yeah, this happens on YouTube and TikTok, it's not real. Storm has like 30 something kilos on me, it's never gonna work. But it does work if I bridge. Now look at what happens. Because Storm can just pick me up and throw me over, but same weight category, never gonna happen. So I will just I will bring his ribs towards me, push. Now what happens? Look at my hip. My hip is the strongest part of my body I can use to reverse someone. If I bridge here, I'm just bridging air. Nothing's happening. If I bridge sideways, I'm still bridging air. So what I want to do is I want to bring his ribs in, and Storm's left glute, his left butt cheek, will always be off the mat because he's sitting sideways. If he brings two butt cheeks to the floor, yeah, we can just go back to this one. Now underneath his glutes, I want to walk my hip in here. So my hip touches his glutes. Now I'm not bridging him to the right, towards the camera. I'm going to bridge him and make him do a face plant. So I'm not bridging in air. I walk my hips and I bridge his face to the mat. There. He makes a face plant. Now if at that time he releases his hands to not get face smashed, like so, I will use my arm, start crawling to the back. So this is how we start mixing things back in. But he will not release my arm. He will just face plant with the top of his skull. Now, in that moment, if he stays there, there will be space between his hip and I will go to his back. But the more common reaction is that he recovers and starts sitting back up. And that's when I bridge again. So I bridge underneath his hip, face plant him to the floor, crawl underneath his rib, and throw him over. Now once again, we're not in the same position because I have underhooks, and I will switch, take side control, or Keskatami. Now let's switch the parts so you can see what the hip does. So this side, please. Nice, so we're here. So first bridge, I walk my hip underneath and I bridge toward our faces, that way. Now his glutes is even further from the floor. I go underneath with my hip, and as soon as he sits back, I bridge him over. Yeah? So 90% of the power is just my hips going back and forth and throwing his hips off. This part of my body is not Russian twisting him over. Once again, the hip work. It's a beautiful reversal here, guys. Don't use upper body strength. Yeah? Your hands are just there to hold the guy in place and don't get submitted. So my hands are not here, they stay here in place. Yeah? Let's play a little game. Face the camera, please. Storm, submit my arm, please. Go. Man, I can chill here all day. Yeah? Even better, he gives me more escapes, but we'll see that in a second. So back to the hips. I'm in my safe place. I'm squeezing his ribs to make him suffer. I get my hip underneath his hip. I bridge his head to the mat, in, crawl underneath, and bridge to throw him over. Yeah? Okay, now for the final one. If Storm does want to attack my arm, he will reach behind him with his hand. That's something I use in our half guard escape videos as well. If he does reach behind me, and he goes here, I will trap the inside of his elbow from the far side. Yes, now get your arm back. So here, or even with two hands. I will then bring it inside my legs, and I don't throw him to the back side because I'm not strong with my hip, but I extend him as I sit up. Yeah, just like in an X-guard or lasso or anything where I extend my partner. So once again, where you do have to be a little bit aware of when I catch his arm, he also traps my legs, and if he wants to go for like a Bas Rutte, we show this first, yeah, like this, body lock, but this is not really a submission I'm very afraid of, especially in the same weight category. I don't use my legs to lift him to the side. I extend and I sit up. So if I stay and I extend my upper body as well, I will just stretch him out, yeah, which hurts, but I'm not reversing him. So I extend and sit up, get my legs out. Now if I curl this leg backwards, his arm goes behind his back. That sucks a little bit, and we get into this position, which is pretty weird, but usually I'll go here and start working pillow hold or something. Let's not get it too depth into that. I do think that this last one, however, is way less high percentage as the bridging one, yeah? And the best thing, finally, would be to combine everything. So let's make a fun flow. If I push his face away, his reaction will be to push his face back and help him bring it to the mat, and then do my escape. The other way around. If I want to bridge his face to the mat and he reverses, I go to this one. Get into north-south, etc. So mixing these escapes together, realizing that getting the back is always the best option, but the risk of getting your arms out and getting submitted might be high. So having more options from Scarfhold, starting off with relaxing, keeping your arms safe, and then going for escapes. If he starts going for chokes, trap the arms. If he starts reaching for your arm, trap the arm or lift him up. And if he starts leaning heavy into you, bridge his face to the mat, reversal, and get a top position. Storm, thank you. Guys, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. Hoes.